It's 9 o'clock here at Radio Adelaide. You're listening to Songcatcher.
But we're not hearing the dulcet voice of Claire.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
And
Hello, Claire.
last week we did have Claire, but a different Claire.
Oh, yes. Yes, you keep on swapping Claires around.
So, happy moving out there to Claire and to Billy. We hope it's going well.
But we do have...
Hi, I'm here. It's Chen. So
Chen
I haven't
is
been
on
here
board.
for a few weeks, I think.
No, and only just back from Sydney as well.
That's right.
So
Very
we
busy
get around
this
evidently. Very good. But while we do have a few people that trying to help keep us on track tonight, Adrian and Chen, that's your job, not mine. We also do have some studio guests, which is the way we operate here at Songcatcher. We have Mark Simpkins and Susan Craig from the band Moss.
Good evening, all.
Hello.
Good to be here. Thank you for having us.
And I guess the first observation is, with a name like Moss, you're probably Rolling Stones fans.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Look, Werner, I'd love to give you some amazing story behind the name Moss, but there isn't one. I've got to make up one. It was like one day we thought, what name should we give the band? And I kind of said, Moss, green fuzzy stuff, and that was it. And
But I thought a Rolling Stone gathers no moss.
There's
so
no
that worked for me.
magical, amazing. Oh man, that's an amazing name. No, sorry, I'll have to make something up.
Now, we've got two of you here who I presume are the main songwriters for the band, but would you like to tell us a bit more about Moss itself? I presume there's more to it than just the two of you. Has there always been, or was the originally idea for the band just a duo, or have you always played as a band?
It evolved in 2012. During the 80s and 90s, I worked with a lot of musicians around Adelaide, and there was a couple of fellas I worked with back then. Rest his soul, Alan Waller. People will remember Alan as one of the better reading drummers in Adelaide. He was a tremendous fellow and a tremendous drummer. And another chap, Greg Dawson, we used to get together and have a little jam every now and then. And Alan wanted to get. We had a band back in the 90s called Peeping Willie and the Y-Fronts, and it was like a Bill Haley concept band, and it was tremendous fun. Anyway, Alan wanted to get something going again, and hence the early days of Moss. And I saw Sue performing at another venue, and I thought, now there's somebody that would work really well out in front, and so Moss started to evolve and come together during 2012, and by late 2012 we were a band as such, out there doing our thing.
And when did the name come along?
After Sue joined us.
We just said, what should we call it? That's how it
I don't think she liked Peeping Willie and the Y-Fronts, so that one had to go.
But there's
She
five
didn't
of
want to
us.
front that band.
No, she didn't want to front that band.
Why not? But so when did it change from a Bill Haley concept band to doing original music?
Oh, yeah. The Bill Haley concept band actually stopped in the 90s, and I had a little bit of a hiatus for a while, just focused on other things like my son and making sure he was trained and well equipped for life and all that sort of stuff, and being out 6 nights a week working in music was not helping that cause, and so I devoted myself to my son. But
Where do you get 6 nights work a week out in Adelaide?
during those wonderful
Those
years,
were the
yes,
days, my friend.
particularly the 80s, six shows a week was not uncommon. I probably toned it back to 3 to 4 during the 90s, but that was still enough for me. And there's a well-deserved rest, but more important issues such as my son. And so when he was qualified in a job and moving out of home, as they do when they get into their 20s, it was time to go back to the things that I loved the most, loved as much.
So really originally started off as a cover band. And that's going back, 6 years, Mark?
Yes. Yeah.
And then about 3-4 years ago, probably with the start of Belle, Will You Still Love Me When I Change, a song about transgender and the issues trans people face, that kind of kicked the ball off, I guess.
Yeah. And I must admit, I've always wanted to write my own music since I was a teenager, but just the time had never been right. And as you know, with original music, all music was original at one point, But I guess as you want to earn in those earning years, playing show bands and corporate work and all that was where it was an earning.
Well, it still is where most of the money is, unless you're right at the top.
Yes, that's right. And
We're not quite there.
no,
Got a few more runs on the ladder
by
to
a
climb.
damn long shot.
But sorry. go
Okay,
on.
so you start writing originals, but you're now known for writing songs that have got a
Social political.
social
Well-
conscience and all that kind of stuff. Is Bell what kicked that off? Is sort of having a bit of a shall we say a hit? With that song, having a song that gets you some notice, doing that kind of thing.
I guess so. And my background, I've sort of popped in and out of music all my life, and with a guitar at the age of about 20. And so I used to write songs, but not. I had a bit like Mark, had a family. Family was my first priority in my business, so I'd always kind of tinkered. And when I actually had a friend who gave birth to a son who was indeed born trans, and at the age of 19, Nicholas announced he was trans and made the transition into a woman. And look, I don't know why, but at the time we said that we'd sort of start working towards our own material, and this was perfect because at the time it was also very topical. And Nicholas became Isabel. She was Isabel, but Nick changed her name to Isabel. And Isabel was a fairly dynamic, out there woman. And I just know she would have really appreciated the song. In fact, 2 years before she actually passed away, she only enjoyed her new life for about 2 years, and sadly she died of cancer at the age of 21. But
I think the stimulus, if I can recall correctly, was the fact that Nicholas, who became Bell, was inducted into the Western Australian Women's Hall of Fame, and I remember us saying, how extraordinary is that a person born as a male who transgendered to a female was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame in only 2 years. It must have been an extraordinary contribution. And so that was
her.
That was the inspiration.
That was
to commemorate her in song.
Yeah. And so we figure, if you're going to write about something, you really, I feel, really need to write about something of importance. And remember, we are all from the 70s, and during that time, the stage was our podium and the lyrics were our speeches, because there wasn't the freedom of speech and the sort of social media that we have today. So we are all mature age musicians, and we come from those days of protest songs anyway, so we're quite familiar with them. So it's really quite organic with us. And being mature age musicians, you can kind of hear the road in our music too. And all the other band members, Justin Wynn, David, and Ned Kelly, we call him. They too have lived that road and have massive musical experience, and also really get on board with wanting to write about issues of consequence, I guess. And
we're all parents and grandparents, and we want to leave the world in a better place, and so why not do it through our song?
Okay, well, it's probably time that we did have a song, and we'll talk about the song afterwards, and get back to talk a bit more about who else is in Moss after this song. This song is called Rock God.
we were listening to Rock God, which I guess is also a very important message.
Yes, it was.
I understand that that's on. I don't know how you've released it, but it's also on a track on the current Scala CD. So you must have entered it in Boom or something along those lines. When you tell us about that?
We did. Yeah, we entered it last year, and thanks to Scala for their kind recognition of it, and they gave us a placing in the open demo, and we were thrilled to bits with that. And as the song itself actually came from a real life experience, which we don't need to go into the detail about necessarily for.
We can go into detail without mentioning names.
Yes. But
we had the pleasure of meeting a real live rock god.
Yeah, but
So you could go into names without going into details.
no. I think it could be anyone at the wrong time, and it's just a mindful reminder that not to get a little ahead of yourself, and
leave our rock gods on stage.
Yeah,
don't take them off stage.
Yeah. We're playing music, we're having fun, and let's just keep it light and joyous like that.
So you guys, as songwriters, have been... So you've won a demo open with the Scala Foom thing, been a finalist as well, and got, I think, a finalist award for the ASA as well, the Australian Song...
That was wicked.
Sorry for you, Braver Than You Believe, yes. Yes, that was a real thrill. We actually went to the dinner in Sydney on that one and met some really interesting people.
Including Michael Hutchins' sister.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. She was the guest speaker that night.
And we've written a song about Michael Hutchins too. That's called In Excess of Life. Look, those awards are great, guys, but I've got to say the best reward as a songwriter is when you have that relationship with somebody in the audience momentarily. And that's happened on a couple of occasions when we've sung Belle. And there have been parents in the audience that have gone, oh my goodness, this is such a relief. That month or that week, their child had announced that they were transgender, and for the first time they realised that other people were speaking of it or singing about it. They realised they weren't alone, and after the show they actually approached us and they were teary and emotional and just so thankful that it's being talked about and they didn't feel alone. So I think people talk about the power of songwriting. It does not change the world overnight. There are lots of elements to it that culminate in lots of things happening. It gives people hope. But it's those moments too where you can see that music does have this wonderful effect.
But providing a little bit of comfort and hope surely isn't a bad thing.
No, very, very
Fantastic.
much terrific thing. And they outweigh awards. They do.
Just seeing people bopping and having fun to it is reward enough for me. So
Moss have had a full album called Face the Music released a while back, and several singles since then.
Yes.
And is that the plan, that you keep on the singles thing for a little while?
Well, our website's sort of geared to sell song by song. The production costs, the production costs of printing and making CDs are huge. And I wonder whether CDs these days are like buggy whips. No one makes them anymore, You download your music and heck, even our kids don't even do that. They just go to Spotify and dial in a genre and listen to it.
So whatever gets offered.
Yeah, they just say they want this style of music and it plays it. And do they have a relationship with the artist and all that sort of stuff?
Sometimes they don't even know the artists who sing their favourite song.
That's right. So we're just trying this method where we, song by song, we'll put it up on our website and where people can purchase and download it and enjoy just that. Because, I guess we've all had the experience in the old days where you've loved a song, you've bought the LP, but there's only about 2 songs on it that you really want to listen to. So I guess there is some benefit in this way that you only buy the song that you want to listen to and you can leave the rest behind if you want.
Yeah, I guess that's a possibility for people around the place, but I still kind of hope, and maybe it's a vain hope, that people that come along and like you will actually support you by buying stuff.
Yes, we keep our fingers crossed, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit about the weekend you just had at Hawker, and that's another issue thing, isn't it? So the idea was to go up to Hawker and show them that tourism is actually a really cool thing, I think. Ecotourism is a really important part of it,
Yes.
in the light of the potential for there to be something rather nasty up there soon.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
what we're seeing at the moment is a real groundswell of people questioning what our governments are doing, both sides, any side, federal or state, and there's something pretty concerning going on in South Australia, where the federal government want to build a radioactive nuclear waste dump in the heart of our farming land in Kimber, and also in the heart of our tourism in the Flinders Ranges. And it's not low-level medical waste only, it is also intermediate/high-level waste. In France, they classify intermediate as high. So it doesn't get any more deadly than that, and the half-life is tens of thousands of years. The main reason why it's such a massive concern is that essentially it does not meet world's best practice. And I'll give you a very quick rundown, and this is why we're in Hawker on the weekend, because we had a concert up there. It was not a protest concert, but certainly a concert to be mindful of what's going on in the area and to give people a little bit of hope. But the things we are mainly concerned about is that the International Atomic Energy Organisation and also our own our PANZA recommend world's best practice for a nuclear waste dump to be away from earthquakes, away from flooding, away from conservation parks, away from farmland, and away from traditional human activity and in Indigenous lands. And what we have found out that the Flinders Ranges is probably, is one of the most earthquake-prone areas in Australia. It has massive floodings in the last 5 decades. There have been 4 major floodings, and one of those floodings in 1989 actually made it to Spencer Gulf. And of course, we have our fishery at the bottom of Spencer Gulf in Port Lincoln. Farming land in Kimber, the site will actually be built right in the middle of farming land in Kimber. And in Flinders Ranges, we have organic grazing cattle. Human inhabitants, of course, Flinders Ranges, tourism, towns and what have you. And both the Adnyamathanha and Mangala peoples have their traditional lands right next to these sites. So we are all scratching our heads for 2 reasons. One, an international or not a national radioactive waste dump to be built in what we would classify as the worst possible site in Australia, and these have been backed by 2 geologists, Victor Gostin and Chris von der Borch, who have prepared documents on the seismic activity and flooding. So the sites are just so inappropriate. But secondly, nobody is listening. We have a law in South Australia prohibiting the development of a nuclear waste dump, and our state government will not uphold the law. So it's really left up to the people, and we do have a rally on the 3rd of November at 11:30 at Parliament House. And we just, as people of South Australia, would like to show that we are questioning this national waste dump, and we need to have it rethought. It really needs to be put to a second authority to see what is really going on.
Yeah, well, it's something that the people of South Australia have stood up for several times already and said no to. But
the concerning thing, Clayton, is that it's kind of been by stealth. People we're talking to often say, well, we've already dealt with that, haven't we? We said no. Mm-hmm. But this is the federal initiative, not the state initiative. And you try and get the media to talk about it, they just will not. And it's like everything's been clamped down. Keep it silent, slip it in the back door. It's really quite concerning. And our journey up there on the weekend was really about cheering the locals up, because it's terribly distressing what's about to happen to that beautiful Flinders Ranges, where I know I've taken my family for years. So, nasty stuff.
We hope people will continue to speak up for what they think. We had better get back to songwriting, though,
yes,
and to music. And perhaps it's not quite right on the track, but I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo.
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like it could almost be on the topic, but not quite. In any case, you'd rather be down to earth.
I'd rather be breathing. Yeah, people say to you, how are you today, Mark? I say, well, I fogged up the mirror this morning, so it's a good day. But it came from a painting. And so you tell the story.
That's right. Just a friend of ours, granddad, painted all the dogs in their family some that had died and some that were still living, and all the dogs that died had halos, and all the dogs that were still living had hats. And I said, "Oh, I'm glad I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo, meaning I'd rather be alive than dead." And it was just one of those crazy songs that talked about, wearing, you'd rather be alive than dead.
And here we go.
Here we go.
I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. Queen of the desert, I got nothing to lose. Nothing in front of me, what will I choose? I'll put a little Amoco in my machine, yeah. The dust in the mirror's the best I see. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. Got things going on, I don't know what to do. So do what you can to make the best of you. Oh, it's a beautiful show to be seen and be heard. Yeah. Before you drink, you make a shake and not stir. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. Don't apologize for the sand in your shoes or the wind in your hair, 'cause your life's on the loose. It'll make you mad and it'll make you sad, so put your paint on your brush and brush like mad. Don't apologize for the sand in your shoes or the wind in your hair, 'cause your love is on the loose. staring back at me. Didn't pay a cent, I didn't rent, it's free. Go enter on the rock, go enter in my car, yeah. Singing the tunes right up to Williams Bar. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo. I'd rather wear a hat than wear a halo.
I'd rather wear a hat than a halo.
Amen.
Very nice song from Moss. So
Yeah.
now we're going to talk about your musical beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like both of you have very different beginning
Yes.
music
yeah.
journey.
Very much so. Mark, you can
So-
take it away if you like. Or
Oh, yeah. Well, mine started at a very early age. I just loved music. I had a very musical family. My grandfather played anything you put in front of him. He was one of those fellas, and just loved the idea of it. And then when I was in grade 6, there was a notice on the notice board: guitar lessons. I begged my parents to allow me to go. I think it was 10 cents a lesson, and I'd take my 10-cent piece up there and give it the guitar. Yeah, right. A long time ago, and
I'm surprised
anyway.
it wasn't a shilling, but anyway.
Yeah, well, that was Scout. I still remember the shilling.
penny farthing.
And within a short time, I got together with a couple of schoolmates, and our first performance was in grade 6 at where we performed Puff the Magic Dragon. So there's my first public appearance, and I guess it just evolved from there through high school, and of course in my early years we did a lot of time on telly, and Adelaide had its own.
So what were you doing on telly?
Well, in those early years, you had Willy Wheaty, Stars of Tomorrow. You had, Channel 10 had New Faces, I think,
Channel 9ers and stuff.
and all those talent quests, and because we were seen regularly on there. I remember there's the lighting fellow, Reg, someone, I forget his name now. But anyway, he approached us to see whether or not we'd be interested in being part of the regular crew for Adelaide's version of Hey Hey It's Saturday, where we had to do 2 songs a Saturday. So Mum and Dad would cut the whole 2 cars, take the whole band down to Channel 9. We'd spend all of Saturday in Channel 9, and we'd have to introduce cartoons like HR Puff and stuff and all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
We had to bring our mates in and do interviews and perform 2 songs a week on the show, and that was with Dean Davis, if anyone remembers Dean Davis, a lovely fellow, loved the Bee Gees, had a magnificent voice. And when school finished, Hey Hey It's Saturday finished, all that sort of stuff, we then went on to do the rock and roll thing, and we did the town hall dances, and as I was saying during the last song, a couple of old mates. One of the people in that band in the 70s, Ian Ned Kelly, is now with Moss again, and so it was tremendous having Ned back, because Ned's about as musical as you can imagine. He's another one like my grandpa that can pick up any instrument and make sense of it, which is why he plays guitar and keyboards in the band. Then after that, I spent some time in theatre companies, and in the 80s got into the show band cabaret stuff, because in my 20s I was starting a life and I had to earn money. And
bring the money on.
And they were that was the heyday, as many musicians out there hopefully listening tonight would remember that Adelaide was vibrant. If you wanted to work, you worked. You'd front up to a booking agent like Yellowstone, Vegas, Top Bands, all those agencies back then at that time, and they'd just say, get your diary out, and they'd fill it.
Fill it up for you.
So that was good. And it's certainly a lot different from today, but today is about I guess I've played other people's music for all these years, and I've always had this tugging to do my own music, and I figure at this point in my life, why damn not?
And Susan kind of had the opposite idea, I think, from very, very early on.
Well, I'll be very short because my musical history is very short. Like I said, I had my guitar and I was tinkering around with that in and out of music and playing open mics, that sort of thing with family and friends. And but from a very early stage, I knew I was musical because I used to, in primary and high school, I used to make my girlfriends stand in the toilets all throughout their lunch hour and sing harmonies with me. They didn't really like it or understand what was happening, but I just loved it. I loved the bathroom resonating with all those songs. And I would use the hairbrush more as a microphone than its intended use to brush my hair. I mean, most girls do, I suppose, but I do remember dancing around with my microphone a lot and making my mates go into the toilets and the lunch hour. So it was always there. And I've always sort of been a writer, and I've always been drawn to balladeers. I've always been drawn to balladeers whose voices are like having a massage, yet their lyrics really cut through. And I love those balladeers who can sort of have those blistering lyrics as well that make you sit up and pay attention. So I used to write songs. I used to write words to music that didn't have words. And so it's kind of always been there. So it's interesting then that that has been my bent, but I had not had any musical experience of consequence. And Mark, whilst he didn't write, has had a massive road in musical experiences. Mm-hmm. And so you pop those two together, and I think they could be a bit of a powerhouse. I think the most memorable moment I had, this is going back... in my 40s, I took part in a wax lyrical event, and it was actually the South Australian, it was Scala, I think, who were doing, the Australian Music Association, who went around Australia, and they went to 70 locations, and in Adelaide it was the Gov, and they just wanted to sort of showcase talent all around Australia in local pubs. And I'm not too sure where it ended up, but that was a fantastic experience in those days. And I sang 3 of my songs then.
Well, I think we're going to hear a little bit about your songwriting together in the next segment, but we'd better move on to the next song. Mm-hmm. Who would like to introduce the Bankster?
Well, I thought I'd put this one in because Ian Ned Kelly and I get together every Tuesday night, and we try and get a bit of music together, then we handball it over to Sue to put some good lyrics to it. And this was the first one, with Ned coming back into my life and joining me and writing some music. We just threw this one down one night when we're just in a bit of a jovial mood. It was
after the AMP.
And the Bank Royal Commission was just in full flight, and we just started jamming around, and this came out, and I hope you like it.
Oh,
my money.
You're listening to Radio Adelaide. It's time for Songcatcher. I'm still on the weekend. Okay, forgive me. We have to move on.
It's Monday.
Yeah, and it's also start thinking time.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think there's
very
a
important.
There's a message in that for me, isn't there? It's time for the Talk About song. And you guys have elected Start Thinking. Now, is this something that you collaborated with?
Oh, yes. I wrote the music with Clive Pollard, and Sue wrote the lyrics, and it's very relevant in terms of this radioactive waste dump.
So
And
who writes first? Where does it start?
traditionally, it's been, I put together, we put together these songs and they go into a shelf. And the greatest example of this was Emily on the Face the Music album. I wrote this probably 3 to 4 months before Sue put words to it, but we couldn't think of the story. So anyway, we came out of the movie Suffragette, and Sue said, I've got to write a song about that. And that was the music that
and that fitted okay.
That fitted.
Well, at the time that Mark composed this, the music, it was also the time we became aware of the radioactive waste dump, and I thought, man, the song that Mark put forward was very sort of almost futuristic, and I wanted to write a song that was called Start Thinking, asking our governments to start thinking about this, and it's been written by a person who has not been born yet, talking to us and asking us to start thinking. And I just kind of quote the bridge in the song, if I may, Werner. I decided to manipulate some of the words for our national anthem. And it goes like this. You had golden soil. You had nature's gifts not to spoil. You had beauty rich and rare. In history's stage, did you blot the page? Or did you advance Australia fair? And I think that hits it right on the head, because there's a wonderful saying that I've come across that says, we have not inherited this earth from our parents to do with it as we will. We have borrowed it from our children, and we must be careful to use it in their interests as well as our own. So this song, I wanted it to be all about somebody who has not been born yet, looking back at us and saying, look at my life now, look at what you've done. You really need to start thinking. And we are on the crossroads in Australia with nuclear. We are very much in the crossroads, and I hope we take the right path.
Okay, so we've got a clear idea of what you had in mind. Mark, when you wrote the music, what was in your mind at that point?
Certainly not that story. I heard an interview with Andy Summers from the Police years ago, and Andy Summers just grabs or makes noises with his guitar, trying to find interesting sounds. And you'll hear with the first chord that comes up in this song, a little unconventional kind of a chord, and it started with that idea. Then Clive Pollard, who was with me at the time with his keyboard, started to work around that chord with a very spacey sound, and it just evolved, and we just liked where it was going and finished it. And then, of course, Sue then saw the opportunity to link it to the story she's just explained. Because
you had the futuristic idea in your head, the spacey sound.
The spacey sound, came to mind, and it kind of all just comes all at the same time, I guess. And it was very topical at the time, and something, as you've probably gathered by now, that we are so passionate about.
And did the structure that they wrote this musical piece to, did that suit what you had in mind? Or did you send it back to them and say, well, I want another verse, or I want a bridge here, or I want something else? Or do you just work with what you've got?
Well, most of the time it falls into place, but sometimes it goes back, and yes, there is a bit of collaboration that does go on. Mm-hmm. But this particular song, it fell into place pretty much straight in. The arrangement tends to get...
you had a story you wanted to tell, and we had to make the song then fit or accommodate the full story. So there's a little bit of juggling around.
I've got an extra line or an extra idea, have to fit in here. And
a bit more instrumental, or take this from here. So we never have sat down together and worked out a song. Mark... and in recent times, Ian Kelly composed the music. And we also have a library of music that's never gone anywhere, that we sift through.
It's also got to work with the band too, the stuff that we put together, and we put it to the band, and you play it and everyone goes, it ain't going to work.
Doesn't grab us.
So,
No,
so out she
Oh, no,
goes,
they're
you know.
very much involved. And they put the spit and polish on it. Like, okay, the structure's there, the melody's there, the chords are there, the arrangement's there. Bring it to the band, and then David will, pop his drums on there. That how he feels, and Justin, with his bass. So they kind of then whip it into shape, if you like.
So for Susan, so after you coming up with the lyrics, do you ever like, for Mark, do you ever say like, oh, I don't really like this sentence, would you like to change it?
He wouldn't dare. He wouldn't dare.
Said.
Mark's my partner in life as well, so he knows he's in
Yes.
big trouble.
Yes.
No, go on. Well, you
Happy
can answer
wife,
that.
happy life. No. Well, yeah, we have a great creative spirit, and
I wouldn't
of
be
course,
offended if that was the case.
I think there'd be times I've made suggestions, but it's about coming up with something that we all love, and so there's no sacred ground.
Okay,
Right.
well, I think we might play the song. Start Thinking.
Thank you.
You're listening to Songcatcher. That was Start Thinking by our Songcatcher guests, Moss. We're at the very end of the show. So, guys, you have a couple of announcements, I think, on gigs.
Oh, yes. We've got a couple coming up. On the 23rd of November, we'll be at the Gaslight Tavern, a favourite for a lot of bands. And the other one I'm really looking forward to as well is the Three Brothers Arms at Macclesfield. The publican there is enormously passionate about music, particularly original music, and it was a real delight to meet him, and I'm looking forward to go up there and doing a show at that place. So.
Very good.
So a couple of the immediates.
Okay, and I think you've got an opportunity next week to potentially rewrite or draft a new national anthem.
Is that next week or this week?
This week.
This week.
This
I
week,
think.
Thursday night.
Thursday night at the Box Factory at 7 o'clock. And one of our previous or recent Songcatcher guests, Steve Charles, will be running that workshop, and you get an opportunity to contribute to Australia's next national anthem and think about what needs to go into the next national anthem.
Wow.
Yes, I believe
You see
nothing.
Clayton's brain ticking over instantly.
Nothing is going to be girt.
Yeah. Good.
I think that's fair.
Good, they're right out of here.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much, folks.
Pleasure.
Stick around for mixtape because
Thank you.
Moss will also be presenting mixtape tonight on a bit of a topic that we've already been talking about.
Songcatcher is going to love you and leave you with an ode to the 70s. And this is Moss. Ciao.
You won the trophy. I am woman. Hear me roar, hear me roar, hear me roar. Don't need the money, just wanna be free to sing my song. I'll be gone, sing my song. We're living in the 70s. The words you sang to set us free. You made a new sound. You rocked and we turned up the radio. The radio, we turn up the radio. The crowd attacked you. They rocked the stage and they wouldn't go. They let go, they let go. We're living in the 70s. You rocked, you rolled, you set us free. The sacks were packed, we voted stay. We brought them back from hell that day. With white we ruled for years before.